The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the voices of 100 different species. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in floating pods that moved slowly around the central speaking platform. Each pod was designed for its occupants' biology, some filled with water for aquatic species, others with thick atmosphere for gas-breathing aliens, and many with the standard oxygen mix that most species preferred. Admiral Vexithala of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center platform, his tall blue form commanding attention. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke, his voice echoing through the translation systems that turned his words into dozens of languages. "Fellow council members," Vexithala announced, his tone dripping with confidence. "I bring news of a minor curiosity in the Outer Rim territories. Our deep space sensors have detected a small group of vessels approaching the Kepler 442 system." A holographic display materialized above the platform, showing a star map with 12 tiny dots moving slowly toward a yellow star. The dots were so small they were barely visible against the vast space around them. 12 ships, Vexithala continued with a dismissive wave of one hand, each no larger than our standard escape pods. Our analysis suggests primitive construction, possibly refugee vessels from some failed colony. The Aquilan representative, a bird-like creature with silver feathers, leaned forward in her water-filled pod. "Have you attempted communication with these vessels?" Vexithala's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Communication? Honored Creole, these ships barely register on our sensors. Their energy signatures are so weak we initially mistook them for space debris. What could such primitives possibly have to say that would interest the Galactic Council?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The hegemony delegate, a massive insectoid creature, buzzed his approval. "The Admiral speaks wisdom. The Outer Rim territories are often traveled by desperate refugees seeking new homes. These vessels pose no threat to any established civilization. But they are heading for Kepler 442, pointed out the representative from the Stellar Federation, her translator rendering her melodic tones into standard galactic. "That system has been under territorial dispute for 3 cycles. Perhaps we should investigate their intentions." This suggestion brought outright laughter from several delegates. The Zephyrian Admiral's chest swelled with amusement. "Investigate? Look at them." The holographic display zoomed in on the approaching ships, revealing sleek but tiny vessels that looked more like personal transports than military craft. "My smallest patrol ship could destroy their entire fleet without powering up its main weapons." The Draconian Collective's representative, a scaled humanoid with glowing red eyes, hissed his agreement. "These insects dare to claim territory that great civilizations dispute? It is almost insulting that we waste time discussing them." The chamber filled with various sounds of alien laughter. Clicks, buzzes, trills, and roars that the translation system rendered into amusement for all to understand. Even species that were usually enemies found common ground in mocking the approaching vessels. "Perhaps," suggested a delegate from the outer colonies, his voice barely audible over the laughter, "we should consider that appearances can be deceiving. The galaxy has seen small forces achieve unexpected victories before." This comment only increased the amusement. Vexithala's 4 eyes gleamed with condescending humor. "Honored colleague, I appreciate your caution, but let us apply logic to this situation. These 12 vessels combined have less mass than a single Zephyrian corvette. Their energy output is so minimal our sensors required significant amplification just to detect them. What possible threat could they represent?" The holographic display updated to show comparative sizes. The human ships appeared as tiny specks next to the silhouettes of various Council fleet vessels. The largest Zephyrian dreadnought was shown to be nearly 1,000 times more massive than the biggest of the approaching ships. Furthermore, Vexithala continued, warming to his subject, "Preliminary analysis of their construction suggests technology at least 2 centuries behind current galactic standards. No energy shields, no visible weapon systems, no advanced propulsion signatures. They move through space like ancient chemical rockets, leaving heat trails that any child could track." The Crystalline Consortium's representative, a being of living mineral who communicated through light patterns, flashed colors that translated as deep amusement. "Are we certain these are even warships? They appear more suitable for transporting cargo or passengers than engaging in combat." "Exactly my point," Vexithala declared triumphantly. "These are clearly refugee vessels, possibly carrying survivors from some failed colony world." The galaxy is full of such desperate groups, seeking new homes after their primitive societies collapse under the weight of their own limitations. The discussion continued for several more minutes, with delegates sharing stories of similar encounters with primitive species. Most tales ended the same way, with the primitives either surrendering immediately or being easily destroyed by vastly superior council forces. What none of the delegates knew, as they laughed and dismissed the approaching fleet, was that their sensor readings were entirely wrong. The ships they detected were real, but they represented only the smallest fraction of what was actually approaching the Kepler 442 system. The beings aboard those vessels possessed technology so advanced that it made their ships invisible to conventional sensors, allowing them to hide fleets within fleets and compress vast armadas into spaces that appeared empty. The species flying those ships had once been known to the galaxy, but that was 50 years ago, before their home system had gone dark and they had disappeared from galactic civilization. The Council had assumed they were extinct, just another failed species that couldn't compete in the harsh reality of galactic politics. They called themselves humans, and their small fleet carried technology that would have terrified the Council delegates if they had been capable of detecting it. But for now, the galaxy's most powerful civilization saw only what the humans wanted them to see: 12 small, harmless vessels approaching a disputed star system. As the council session continued, Vexathala began making plans to intercept the refugee fleet. It would be a simple matter, he thought, to either capture or destroy such primitive vessels. Perhaps he would even broadcast the encounter to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority to the other council members. The Admiral had no way of knowing that this decision would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. In his arrogance, he was about to awaken something that had been sleeping in the darkness between stars, something that had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. The human fleet continued its approach toward Kepler 442, maintaining course and speed as if unaware of the massive forces gathering to intercept them. But appearances, as one wise delegate had noted, could indeed be deceiving. The humans knew exactly what waited for them, and they were ready. Captain Zorvak of the Zephyrian heavy cruiser Dominion's Fist stared at the tactical display with barely concealed boredom. His ship, a massive vessel capable of reducing planets to molten slag, hung in space at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a predator waiting for prey. The irony of using such overwhelming firepower against 12 tiny ships was not lost on him. "Status report," Zorvak commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge where dozens of Zephyrian officers worked at their stations. The bridge itself was a monument to Zephyrian engineering, a vast space filled with holographic displays and control surfaces that could manage a fleet of smaller vessels. The primitive vessels maintained their current course and speed, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kexmar. They will enter the system's outer boundary in approximately 6 standard hours. No change in their energy signatures or formation. Zorvak's mandibles clicked in annoyance. 6 hours to intercept targets that move like drifting asteroids. I should be commanding a battle fleet against the hegemony's expansion forces, not playing babysitter to refugee ships. The communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, Admiral Vexathala has authorized full discretion in handling this situation. He suggests making an example of these primitives to demonstrate Zephyrian authority in the disputed territories." An example, Zorvak mused, studying the approaching ships on his display. Each vessel was so small that his ship's point defense systems could destroy them all in seconds. "Very well. Open a channel to the Galactic Council chambers. If we're going to deal with these insects, we might as well entertain our colleagues." Within minutes, a live communication link connected the Dominion's Fist to the council chambers, where delegates continued their session. The holographic displays throughout the chamber now showed the view from Zorvak's bridge, giving hundreds of representatives a front-row seat to what they expected would be a quick demonstration of superior firepower. "Honored delegates," Zorvak announced, his image appearing on screens throughout the galaxy. "I am Captain Zorvak of the Zephyrian Navy. You are about to witness how the Empire deals with territorial violations by primitive species." The primitive vessels continued their approach, still hours away but clearly visible on long-range sensors. Zorvak noticed that they moved in a precise formation, maintaining exact distances from each other despite the vast emptiness of space around them. It suggested some level of coordination, though nothing that impressed him. Communications, open all frequencies. Let's see what these refugees have to say for themselves, Zorvac ordered. The communication officer worked at her station for several minutes before looking up with confusion. Sir, I'm detecting no response to our hails on any standard frequency. Either they cannot receive our transmissions or they are choosing to ignore us. Choosing to ignore us? Zorvac's voice rose with indignation. Several other bridge officers looked up from their stations, sensing their captain's growing anger. No primitive species ignores the Zephyrian Empire. Transmit on all emergency frequencies. Make it clear that we demand immediate response and compliance. More minutes passed with no reply from the approaching ships. They continued on their course as if the massive Zephyrian cruiser simply didn't exist. On the council feeds, delegates began murmuring among themselves, some expressing amusement at the primitives' apparent ignorance of their situation. Sir, the tactical officer reported, I'm reading some unusual energy patterns from the lead vessel. Very faint, but there seems to be some kind of scanning activity directed at our ship. Zorvac studied his displays with renewed interest. Scanning us? What kind of scans? Unknown, sir. The energy signature doesn't match any scanning technology in our databases. It's almost like they're using some form of passive sensor array we've never encountered before. Impossible, Zorvac declared. Our databases contain every known scanning technology in the galaxy. These primitives couldn't possibly have developed something we haven't seen. But even as he spoke, Zorvac felt a slight unease growing in his mind. The approaching ships maintained their course with mathematical precision, their formation never wavering despite the fact that space travel at such speeds normally required constant course corrections. It suggested navigation technology far more advanced than their energy signatures indicated. Sir, the lead vessel is finally responding to our hails, the communications officer announced suddenly. Put it through, Zorvac commanded, straightening in his command chair. Finally, these primitives would learn their place in the galactic order. The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of a human female. Though Zorvac didn't recognize the species, she appeared to be middle-aged by most humanoid standards, with graying brown hair and calm brown eyes. She wore a simple uniform that bore no insignia Zorvac could identify. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Determination, the human said, her voice clear and confident. You are interfering with peaceful vessels in neutral space. Please state your intentions. Zorvac was momentarily taken aback by the human's tone. Most primitives cowered when faced with Zephyrian military power. But this female spoke as if she were addressing an equal. I am Captain Zorvac of the Zephyrian Empire. You are approaching territories claimed by the Galactic Council. Identify yourselves immediately and prepare for boarding. Captain Chen's expression didn't change. Captain Zorvac, we are peaceful colonists claiming settlement rights under Article 7 of the Galactic Colonization Compact. Our destination is the Kepler 442 system, which our records show as unclaimed territory. Your records are outdated, Zorvac snapped. That system is under dispute by recognized galactic powers. You will alter course immediately or face the consequences. For the first time, Captain Chen's calm expression shifted slightly. Not with fear, as Zorvac expected, but with what looked almost like pity. Captain, I need to inform you that you are targeting civilian vessels under the protection of the Human Defense Fleet. I strongly advise against any aggressive action. Zorvac's mandibles clicked with laughter, echoed by similar sounds from his bridge crew. Through the council feeds, he could hear delegates across the galaxy expressing amusement at the human's bold words. Human Defense Fleet? Zorvac asked mockingly. You mean your 12 tiny ships? Captain Chen, my vessel alone could destroy your entire fleet without charging its main weapons. You are hardly in a position to make threats. I'm not making threats, Captain, Chen replied quietly. I'm giving you information. What you do with that information is your choice. Something in her tone made Zorvac pause. Despite facing impossible odds, this human showed no fear, no desperation, no anger. She spoke with the calm confidence of someone who held all the advantages in a negotiation. It was impossible, given the situation, but there it was. Sir, his tactical officer said suddenly, I'm detecting some kind of energy fluctuation in the space around the human vessels. Very faint, but it's there. What kind of fluctuation? Zorvac demanded, his attention snapping back to his displays. Unknown, sir. It's almost like space itself is vibrating around their ships. But that's impossible. Zorvac stared at the tactical display, watching the 12 tiny human ships continue their approach. Something was wrong here. Something his sensors couldn't quite detect. But what could 12 primitive vessels possibly do against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? He was about to find out. Captain Zorvac had grown tired of the humans' confident attitude. Despite facing a ship that outmassed her entire fleet by several thousand times, Captain Chen continued to speak, as if she held some kind of advantage. It was time to remind these primitives of their place in the galactic order. "Weapons, officer," Zorvac commanded, his voice carrying across the bridge of the Dominion's fist. "Prepare a warning shot. Target the space directly in front of the lead human vessel. Minimum power setting." "Yes, sir," came the immediate response. Forward pulse cannon charged and ready. Through the communication link that still connected his ship to the Galactic Council chambers, Zorvac could hear the excited murmurs of delegates watching the confrontation. Some species were placing bets on how quickly the human ships would surrender once they witnessed Zephyrian firepower. "Captain Chen," Zorvac announced, his image still appearing on screens throughout the galaxy. "You have 10 seconds to alter course and prepare for boarding. After that, I will demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire controls this sector of space." Captain Chen's calm expression never wavered. "Captain Zorvac, I ask you one final time to reconsider your actions. You are about to make a serious mistake." "The only mistake was yours coming here with your pathetic fleet," Zorvac replied. "Fire the warning shot." A brilliant beam of coherent energy lanced out from the Dominion's fist, streaking across space toward the lead human vessel. The shot was carefully aimed to pass just in front of the ship's bow, close enough to demonstrate the weapon's power without actually causing damage. It was a standard intimidation tactic that had worked on countless primitive species throughout the galaxy. But something impossible happened. Instead of passing harmlessly through empty space, the energy beam struck something solid. For just a moment, geometric patterns of light flared to life around all 12 human vessels, revealing the outline of some kind of massive energy barrier that encompassed the entire fleet. The patterns were unlike anything in Zephyrian databases. Complex mathematical designs that seemed to bend and twist through dimensions that shouldn't exist. What in the void was that? Zorvac demanded, staring at his tactical displays in shock. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the human fleet," his tactical officer reported, his voice filled with confusion. "But that's impossible. Our sensors show their power output as minimal." The energy patterns around the human ships faded as quickly as they had appeared, leaving space looking exactly as it had before. But now Zorvac knew that something was hiding out there, something his most advanced sensors couldn't detect. "Could our sensors be malfunctioning?" Zorvac asked, though he knew the answer. "Zephyrian technology was the most reliable in the galaxy. All systems are operating within normal parameters, sir," the tactical officer confirmed. "But whatever just happened, it's beyond our current understanding." Through the communication link to the council chambers, Zorvac could hear that the laughter and casual conversation had stopped. Delegates across the galaxy had just witnessed something that challenged their understanding of physics and technology. The tiny human fleet had just demonstrated capabilities that seemed impossible. Captain Chen's image still filled the main screen, and now Zorvac noticed something he had missed before. Behind her, he could see other humans working at stations that looked far more advanced than anything his sensors had detected on their ships. The technology visible in the background didn't match the primitive energy signatures his instruments were reading. "Captain Zorvac," Chen said, her voice still calm but now carrying an edge of authority, "you have just targeted civilian vessels under the protection of the Human Defense Fleet. This constitutes an act of aggression under galactic law. I am required to inform you that defensive measures are now authorized." "Defensive measures?" Zorvac's voice cracked slightly. "You have 12 ships against my heavy cruiser. What defensive measures could you possibly—" His words were cut off as every sensor on the Dominion's fist began screaming warnings. Energy signatures were appearing throughout the Kepler 442 system, massive readings that dwarfed even his own ship's power output. But when he looked at the visual displays, space appeared empty, except for the 12 small human vessels. "Sir, I'm reading at least 50 major energy signatures scattered throughout the system," his tactical officer reported, his voice rising with panic. "Class 5 or higher, all of them. But there's nothing on visual sensors." "That's impossible," Zorvac said. But even as he spoke, he knew something fundamental had changed. Run full spectrum analysis. Check for cloaking technology, sensor ghosts, anything. Already running, sir. All tests confirm the energy signatures are real. We're surrounded by massive vessels, but they're somehow invisible to our visual sensors. Through the Council communication link, Zorvac could hear similar reports coming from other ships throughout the galaxy. The energy signatures were being detected by every sensor array in known space, but no one could actually see what was generating them. Captain Chen, Zorvac said, his voice now much more respectful. What exactly are we dealing with here? For the first time since the conversation began, Captain Chen smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile, but it held knowledge that Zorvac was only beginning to grasp. Captain, 50 years ago humanity disappeared from galactic civilization. The Council assumed we were extinct, our technology primitive, our society collapsed. What the galaxy didn't realize was that we withdrew deliberately to develop defenses against the aggressive expansion we witnessed throughout known space. As she spoke, the space around the human fleet began to shimmer. Not with energy patterns this time, but as if reality itself was shifting. Zorvac watched in growing horror as massive shapes began to resolve out of what had appeared to be empty space. The 12 ships you detect are our diplomatic escort, Chen continued. They carry our ambassadors and colonists, but they also carry something else, compressed dimensional spaces containing our actual fleet. The shapes in space were becoming clearer now, and Zorvac's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Ships began materializing around the Kepler 442 system. Vessels so large they made his heavy cruiser look like a shuttlecraft. Their designs were unlike anything in the galactic databases, sleek and organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, I count over 300 vessels and the readings are still climbing. Some of those ships are larger than our biggest dreadnoughts. But it wasn't just the size of the human fleet that terrified Zorvac. It was the technology they were demonstrating. Ships that could hide in compressed dimensions. Energy barriers that could stop weapons fire from appearing to exist. Sensors that could scan Zephyrian vessels without being detected. It all pointed to a level of technological advancement that the galaxy had never seen. How? Zorvac asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We learned, Captain, Chen replied. While the galaxy fought over territory and resources, we learned to manipulate space and time itself. We developed technology that operates partially outside normal dimensional boundaries. Your sensors can't detect us because we exist in spaces your instruments can't measure. The human fleet continued to materialize around the system, and Zorvac realized that his single heavy cruiser was now completely surrounded. Worse, the energy reading suggested that any one of the human vessels could destroy his ship without difficulty. What do you want? Zorvac asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The same thing we've always wanted, Captain, Chen said. To live in peace. But we've learned that sometimes peace must be defended by strength. The galaxy is about to discover that humanity is no longer the weak species it once dismissed. Through the Council communication link, Zorvac could hear delegates across the galaxy falling silent as they realized that the balance of power had just shifted completely. The species they had mocked and dismissed had become the most powerful force in known space, and they were no longer hiding. The bridge of the Dominion's fist had fallen into stunned silence as Captain Zorvac and his crew watched the impossible unfold before them. The space around the Kepler 442 system, which had appeared empty moments before, now contained the largest fleet any of them had ever seen. Hundreds of human vessels hung in the void like sleeping giants awakening from a long dream. Sir, the communications officer said, her voice shaking. I'm receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Vex Thala. The entire Galactic Council is demanding an immediate status report. Zorvac stared at the tactical displays showing energy readings that threatened to overload his ship's sensors. Tell the Admiral. Tell him we have a situation that requires immediate Council attention. But before the communications officer could respond, the air in the center of the bridge began to shimmer. Zorvac and his crew watched in amazement as a human figure materialized out of thin air. Her image so solid and real that several officers reached for their sidearms before realizing they were looking at some kind of advanced holographic projection. The human was an older woman with steel gray hair and piercing blue eyes. She wore a uniform similar to Captain Chen's, but with additional markings that suggested higher rank. When she spoke, Her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the bridge with quiet authority. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Fleet," she said, her calm gaze taking in the entire bridge crew. "Captain Zorvac, I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but circumstances require immediate communication. How are you doing this?" Zorvac demanded, his forearms gesturing at the impossible hologram. "Our shields are raised, our communication systems are secured. You shouldn't be able to project anything onto my bridge." Admiral Vasquez smiled with what might have been genuine sympathy. "Captain, your technology is impressive by galactic standards, but humanity has spent 50 years developing capabilities that operate beyond conventional understanding. What you call impossible, we call Tuesday." Through the communication link still connecting his ship to the Galactic Council, Zorvac could hear the chaos erupting in the council chambers. Delegates from dozens of species were shouting questions and demands, their voices creating a cacophony that the translation system struggled to manage. "Admiral," Zorvac said, trying to regain some measure of control over the situation, "what are your intentions? The Galactic Council will want to know if humanity poses a threat to established civilizations." "That depends entirely on the Council's intentions toward humanity," Vasquez replied. "For 50 years we watched as Council species expanded aggressively throughout the galaxy, conquering or destroying any civilization they deemed primitive. We decided that humanity would not suffer the same fate." As she spoke, the holographic display on Zorvac's bridge updated to show the full scope of the human fleet. Ships of every size and configuration filled the system, from small escort vessels to massive carriers that could house entire cities. But more disturbing were the readings his sensors were detecting from some of the larger vessels. Energy signatures that suggested capabilities beyond anything in the galactic databases. "These ships," Zorvac said, studying the displays, "some of them are reading energy outputs comparable to small stars. How is that possible?" "We learned to harness forces that most species consider theoretical," Vasquez explained. "Zero-point energy, dimensional compression, quantum manipulation. Technologies that allow us to pack the power of a sun into spaces smaller than your shuttle bay." One of Zorvac's officers, a young lieutenant who had been monitoring the long-range sensors, looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Admiral, sir, I'm detecting similar energy signatures appearing throughout the galaxy. It's like human ships are materializing in every major system simultaneously." Vasquez nodded as if this was expected. "Captain Zorvac, what your officer is detecting is humanity's return to galactic civilization. For 50 years we've maintained a presence throughout known space, hidden and watching. Today we've decided to make ourselves known." The implications of her words hit Zorvac like a physical blow. If humanity had ships hidden throughout the galaxy, and if those ships possessed the kind of advanced technology he was witnessing, then the entire balance of galactic power had just shifted overnight. "But why reveal yourselves now?" Zorvac asked. "You could have remained hidden indefinitely." "Because the galaxy is changing, Captain," Vasquez replied, her expression growing serious. "Council expansion has reached the point where entire species are being eliminated or enslaved. We've watched civilizations that showed promise destroyed simply because they were different or inconvenient. Humanity has decided that this must stop." Through the Council communication link, Zorvac could hear that the chaos in the chambers had settled into stunned silence. The delegates were beginning to understand that they were witnessing something that would reshape galactic civilization. "What do you want from the Council?" Zorvac asked, though he suspected the answer would change everything. Admiral Vasquez's holographic form turned to face not just Zorvac, but the hidden cameras that were broadcasting to the Council chambers. When she spoke, her words were clearly intended for every delegate watching. "The Human Defense Fleet has 3 simple requirements," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "First, the immediate cessation of aggressive expansion against developing civilizations. Second, the establishment of protected zones where species can develop without interference. Third, the creation of new galactic laws that guarantee the rights of all sentient beings, not just those with the strongest fleets." "And if the Council refuses?" Zorvac asked, though he dreaded the answer. Vasquez's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes grew colder. "Captain, humanity spent 50 years developing not just defensive capabilities but offensive ones as well. We sincerely hope the Council will choose cooperation, but we are prepared for any alternative." To demonstrate her point, the tactical displays on Zorvak's bridge updated to show targeting solutions appearing on every Council vessel within 100 light-years of the Kepler 442 system. The calculations were so precise they included weak points in ship designs that weren't even in the public databases. "You're scanning our entire fleet," Zorvak said with growing alarm. "How are you penetrating our security systems?" "We're not penetrating them, Captain," Vasquez explained patiently. "We're simply operating on frequencies and in dimensions that your security systems weren't designed to detect. It's like trying to stop a ghost with a wall. We're not really interacting with your technology in ways it can recognize." The magnitude of humanity's technological advantage was becoming clear. If they could scan any ship in the galaxy without being detected, if they could appear anywhere without warning, if they possessed weapons that could target vessels across interstellar distances, then traditional military power meant nothing. "Sir," Zorvak's tactical officer said quietly, "I'm reading massive energy buildups in the human fleet. Whatever they're preparing to do, it's going to be big." Admiral Vasquez nodded. "We're preparing to demonstrate our capabilities to the entire galaxy, Captain. Every species, every civilization, every government will understand exactly what humanity has become. After that demonstration, the Galactic Council will have a choice to make." "What kind of demonstration?" Zorvak asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Vasquez smiled, and for the first time since appearing on his bridge, she looked almost happy. "Captain, humanity is about to announce its return to galactic civilization, and we're going to make sure everyone is listening." The energy readings from the human fleet continued to climb, and Zorvak realized that whatever was about to happen would be visible across the galaxy. The species that had mocked humanity's tiny fleet was about to show the universe exactly what they had become during their 50 years in the shadows. The demonstration was about to begin. Admiral Elena Vasquez's holographic form stood motionless on the bridge of the Dominion's fist for several long moments, her attention focused on something beyond the physical space around her. Captain Zorvak and his crew waited in tense silence, watching as energy readings from the human fleet climbed to levels that shouldn't have been possible. "Captain Zorvak," Vasquez said finally, "in approximately 30 seconds humanity will address the Galactic Council directly. I suggest you and your crew prepare yourselves for what you're about to witness." Before Zorvak could ask what she meant, every communication system in the galaxy activated simultaneously. From the Galactic Council chambers to the smallest outpost on the rim worlds, every screen, every holographic display, every communication device suddenly showed the same image. Admiral Vasquez standing in what appeared to be the command center of a human vessel. "Citizens of the galaxy," Vasquez began, her voice reaching every corner of known space. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Fleet. 50 years ago, humanity withdrew from galactic civilization. Today we return." On his bridge, Zorvak watched his communications officer frantically trying to regain control of their systems. "Sir, they've somehow overridden every communication network in the galaxy. I can't cut the transmission." "Don't bother trying," Vasquez said, apparently hearing the officer's report despite the fact that her hologram should have been a one-way projection. "Our message will reach every sentient being in known space, regardless of any attempts at interference." Through the feeds from the Galactic Council chambers, Zorvak could see delegates from hundreds of species staring in shock at their displays. The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy had just discovered that their communication networks could be controlled by an outside force, and the implications were staggering. "For 5 decades, Vasquez continued, humanity has watched as aggressive species expanded throughout the galaxy, destroying or enslaving any civilization they encountered. We have witnessed the extinction of promising societies, the subjugation of peaceful peoples, and the transformation of exploration into conquest. This ends today." As she spoke, the tactical displays throughout the galaxy began updating to show the true scope of humanity's return. Ships materialized in every major system, revealing that the human fleet was not concentrated in one location, but distributed throughout known space. Thousands of vessels appeared where moments before there had been empty space. "Sir," Zorvak's tactical officer whispered, "our deep space sensors are detecting human ships in every council system. They're everywhere." The demonstration was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human vessels appeared not just in space but in impossible locations. Inside asteroid fields where no ship should have been able to navigate. Within the coronas of stars where the radiation should have destroyed any known technology. Even in the space between galaxies where the distances should have made travel impossible. The technology you are witnessing represents 50 years of dedicated development, Vasquez explained to her galaxy-wide audience. Humanity has learned to manipulate space and time, to compress dimensions, to operate in frequencies beyond conventional detection. We have become something new. In the Galactic Council chambers, the chaos was beginning to subside as delegates realized the magnitude of what they were facing. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves united in their shock at humanity's transformation. The Zephyrian Empire, the hegemony, the Draconian Collective, all of them had become secondary powers overnight. But power, Vasquez continued, must be balanced with responsibility. Humanity does not seek conquest or domination. We seek something far more valuable, peace. A galaxy where species can develop without fear, where exploration is driven by curiosity rather than greed, where strength protects the weak rather than exploiting them. To demonstrate their point, the human fleet began broadcasting detailed scans of every military vessel in the galaxy, weapon systems, shield generators, engine capabilities. Everything was displayed with perfect accuracy, showing that humanity could target any ship anywhere at any time. The Galactic Council has a choice, Vasquez announced. You can choose cooperation, working with humanity to establish a new order based on mutual respect and protection of developing civilizations. Or you can choose conflict and discover exactly what 50 years of preparation has accomplished. Captain Zorvac found himself faced with a decision that would affect not just his ship, but his entire civilization. The Zephyrian Empire had built its power on military might and technological superiority. Now they faced a species that had surpassed them in every measurable way. Admiral Vasquez, Zorvac said, his voice carrying across the open communication channels to the entire galaxy. On behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, I formally request negotiation of a peaceful resolution to this situation. It was the first crack in the old galactic order. Within minutes, similar requests began flooding in from across known space. The hegemony, the Stellar Federation, even the notoriously aggressive Draconian Collective, all began requesting peaceful negotiations rather than risk conflict with humanity's mysterious new capabilities. Negotiations will begin immediately, Vasquez replied. But first, humanity will establish its first colony in 50 years as a demonstration of our peaceful intentions. The 12 ships that had started this entire confrontation, the tiny vessels that the galaxy had mocked, began their final approach to Kepler 442b. When they entered the planet's atmosphere, they revealed their true nature. Each ship unfolded like a flower, expanding into massive structures that could house thousands of colonists. The tiny fleet had been carrying an entire civilization in compressed dimensional spaces. Within hours, a human city began rising on the surface of Kepler 442b. Buildings seemed to grow from the ground itself, using technology that converted raw matter into sophisticated structures. Gardens and parks appeared alongside residential areas and industrial facilities, creating a settlement that was both beautiful and functional. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, Vasquez announced as the construction continued. We offer not just our protection, but our knowledge. Species that join us in peaceful coexistence will have access to technologies that can solve problems your civilizations have struggled with for millennia. The offer was too valuable to refuse. Within days, delegations from across the galaxy began arriving at Kepler 442 to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. The same species that had laughed at the approaching tiny fleet now competed to offer the most favorable trade agreements and alliance terms. Captain Zorvac found himself appointed as the Zephyrian Empire's first ambassador to humanity, a position that would have been unimaginable just days before. As his ship took up a permanent station in the Kepler 442 system, he reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. The human colony continued to grow, becoming a beacon for species that had suffered under the old galactic order. Refugees from destroyed civilizations found new homes, while developing species received protection from humanity's advanced fleet. The galaxy was becoming something it had never been before, a place where strength served compassion rather than conquest. Admiral Vasquez's final message to the galaxy was simple. Humanity has returned not as conquerors, but as guardians. We invite all species to join us in building a galaxy worthy of the countless civilizations it contains. As the transmission ended and normal communications resumed throughout known space, Captain Zorvac realized that his crew would have an incredible story to tell. They had been present at the moment when the galaxy discovered that the species they had dismissed as extinct had become its most powerful protector. The tiny fleet that had approached Kepler 442 had indeed been tiny, but it had carried with it the future of galactic civilization, and that future belonged to humanity.